right, so to close us off today, it is my pleasure to introduce Jon Thaxton from Gulf Coast Community Foundation, who will give our closing remarks. Jon creates and implements Gulf Coast Community Foundation's key strategies for transforming our region's nonprofit community and provides leadership in emerging issues. Jon joined the Gulf Coast in 2012 as the Director of Community Investment while completing his 12th year of service on the Sarasota County Commission. He was promoted to Senior Vice President of Gulf Coast Community Foundation in 2015. Please join me in welcoming Jon Thaxton. Thanks. Here's Jon Thaxton.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So how are we doing on time?
We're good.
All right, we got 10 minutes. We got 9 minutes, so we're going to get out of here on time. I was asked to give just a few words of closing comments designed to motivate and inspire, which is always an intimidating subject for me. Frankly, any public speaking is intimidating for me, but probably nothing as intimidating as seeing your name appear as the last thing before happy hour. that one really hits close to home. Anyways, I'd like to reiterate some of the things that some of the speakers had said here, specifically around the human measurement of the work that we're doing. For the last 10 years, I've been at Gulf Coast Community Foundation. But most of you know my career, 40 years before that, working in the field of conservation. The 10 years in Gulf Coast Community Foundation has opened up doors and concepts and ideas that even as a fifth-generation native Sarasotan, I had never really seen or understood before. We live in a community where over half of the children that go to our schools rely on free and reduced lunch and summer feeding programs for adequate nutrition levels. And over 1,000 of these children that are in our schools last year experienced homelessness. Yeah, this is Sarasota numbers. 72,000 of the households in Sarasota County, or over 40%, are cost burden, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing, which means that they have to make a decision every month about what not to spend money on. Is it going to be healthcare? Is it going to be transportation? Is it going to be early care and education? And frighteningly so, we have a mental health program in this community that takes months for youth to get access to, resulting in one of the highest suicide rates in the entire state of Florida. And all of these facts are based upon figures that happened before major events that caused them all to be exacerbated, such as red tide, the huge red tide outbreak that we had several years ago, took the incomes of a lot of these service workforces and just plummeted and increased their unemployment rates. And then on top of that, we had this real estate boom where rents doubled inside a 2-year period. And home ownership is now so distant, most of these working families cannot even consider it. Now, here comes Hurricane Ian, which destroyed a large portion of the critical, affordable housing that was already scarce in the communities of Northport and Port Charlotte. All of these issues disproportionately burden those hardworking families that provide for the quality of life that we all enjoy. Unfortunately, a lot of these conditions were avoidable. For instance, the prolonged red tide, this is a result of policy decisions that failed to take into the account the large amount of anthropogenic nutrients that we are dumping and polluting our waterways with. The loss of secure housing, essential for health of a family, didn't result from some inanimate force called the market. It was caused by policy decisions that ignored the necessity of workforce housing decade after decade. And it was policy decisions that turned a county once known for fresh fruit, vegetables, and cattle into a county known for anything but agriculture. And finally, the loss of life, housing, and incomes from Hurricane Ian was not a natural disaster. It was a human disaster that resulted in policies that allowed for the ditching and the draining of wetlands and the constructions of tens of thousands of homes in those wetland and floodplain areas. I would like for you for a moment in closing to recall the inspirational messages that we've heard today. Messages from people like Senator Terry, Jim Strickland, and Tiffany Bailey, and the need to return to healthy local food. Messages from Lee Hayes Byron that talk about the energy burden and the inequity that we're placing on these hardworking families. And more specifically, Philip Tavel and the energy savings that he is working for so that this health and human service agencies can increase their impact in the communities. And finally, Sophia Kiana's global stories of how low-income families and nations have been disproportionately impacted by our policies. She gave us a clarion call to action. I was recently interviewed by a Florida Trend magazine reporter about Hurricane Ian, and the reporter asked me, "Weren't you surprised at all the devastation and the impact?" I kind of had to, I was taken back for a moment, and I had to tell the reporter, no, we were not surprised because these impacts were not only predictable, they were in fact predicted. So all of these policy speeches that you've heard today, these calls to action, they will directly result in an increased quality of life and a standard for living for the working poor in our community. For me, in the field of philanthropy, an interesting word that simply means the love of humanity, the love of humans, from two Greek words, philo and anthropos. For me, this is what causes me to be inspired about the work that we're doing in conservation and sustainability. I hope that it inspires you as we work to build a clean, more sustainable and resilient community. And I also want to say thank you again to the staff and the volunteers and the presenters of this remarkable program. My name is Jon Thaxton. I look forward to seeing you all next year.